When I met you in the summer.
Equity mind.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to the Equity Mate Summer Series, proudly brought to you by Sharesies. Over 12 episodes, we're diving into some of the most interesting, exciting and well-known companies from here in Australia and the US. Each episode, we're also joined by an expert to help us unpack the key metrics, the bull case and the bear case for each company. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode.
Absolutely. Now, I did say at the top that we're joined by an expert in each. This is the one and only episode in this series that we're not joined by an expert. So pressure's on us. We're unpacking Deere Company.
Yeah, we'll be playing the expert, I guess.
We'll be playing the expert. It's a fascinating company, Deere & Co., listed over in the States, and you can get access to the States with the Sharesies platform. Proudly supporting Summer Series. Two reasons we love Sharesies. The platform is easy and approachable, especially with Auto Invest, where you now can truly execute dollar cost averaging into US, Australian and New Zealand shares. So all the markets are available. Pick an order, the amount you want to regularly invest, and Auto Invest will place the buys for you. You can choose a pre-made order or create your own DIY Auto Invest with companies or exchange-traded funds listed in those three markets, Australia, US and New Zealand. If you would like to sign up, you can use the promo code GROW. Now, we don't get any kickback from this. There's no commercial agreement with us, but you do get $10 into your account ready to invest. Promo T's and C's apply. You can hit sharesies.com.au to learn more or download the Sharesies app today. Now, we are licensed, but we're not aware of your personal circumstances. All info on this show is education and entertainment purposes only. Any advice is general advice. But Ren, Deere & Company,
Yes.
in a sentence, what have we got?
The apple of agriculture.
Whoa, hold on. The apple of agriculture. Anything more to add?
I think that really sums it up. No,
It's a tech company.
So, well, yeah, they position themselves as a tech company. So I think Deere is the leading maker of farm equipment and machinery. And when we say leading, we will talk about its competitors, but we do mean leading. Mm-hmm. But it, much like Apple, is trying to transition away from a hardware business to a software and services recurring revenue business. It's just that Apple's hardware is beautifully designed music players and computers and phones. And
hey, there's nothing wrong with a John Deere tractor.
Well, and Deere's hardware are tractors and combine harvesters and sprayers. Yeah. And the like.
I don't know which side of the fence you sit on, but I think some of the farming machinery these days looks pretty swish-o.
So, well, you are from Wagga, so...
I am. Technically the city of Wagga.
Townie.
Yeah. My parents do have farming roots, though. Dad was a farmer.
Okay.
It's not that makes any difference for me.
this is two city boys talking farming.
Well, let's get stuck in. The history of Deere & Co. was started by John Deere in 1837. So that makes this company 185 years old. John Deere was a blacksmith and started making farm tools. You know, your pitchforks, your shovels, your plows. Their early innovation came with in the company when they started moving from making products once they were ordered to actually manufacturing the products in advance and then selling them, which started to give them that competitive edge. And in the 20th century, Deere became synonymous with the big gasoline-powered green tractors that you might often see driving around in farm paddocks as you're driving between major capital cities here in Australia or over in the States.
As you're driving between Wagga and Canberra?
Yes, Wagga and Coolum, even Ren. Today, it is a $100 billion company with over 75,000 employees. So, leading manufacturer of equipment and machinery in agriculture.
Now, they've got a few key business lines. So they've got production and precision ag, which is the big ag stuff, your tractors, your harvesters, your sprayers. Then they've got small ag and turf, which is... you know, your John Deere ride-on mowers and stuff like that. Yeah, a little bit smaller scale.
I would love a ride-on mower.
Yeah, so for people unfamiliar, Bryce's first ever business was Lesky's Lawns.
Yes.
And ever since then, he has had an obsession with lawns to the point where the working theory is he only plays golf because it's the only sport with manicured grass.
There is an element of that.
So big ag, small ag, and then construction and forestry.
Yeah. The big ag is the bulk of their sales by segment, 41% of sales coming from that part of the business, 30% then coming from their small ag, and 29% from construction and forestry.
So they're a global business. 57% of their sales come out of the US and Canada, so North America, 22% from Europe, 10% from Latin America, and 11% from, this is how they bucket it, Asia, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and Middle East.
Other.
It's a big.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a wide range of people in there.
There are.
Half the world is in that bucket.
Half the world is in that bucket. You mentioned at the top, Ren, their, I guess, dominance over competitors. So global business, but where are they sitting in terms of market share in tractors and ag?
Yeah, so according to Ibis World, now we didn't pay for the report, so...
It's bloody expensive.
Yeah, but we managed to pull out in the tractor and agricultural machinery market globally, Deere & Co. have 43% of the market.
Wow.
So they're the biggest player. There are really two other big players of note, and then a number of smaller players. Both of them are house of brands. Now, that means that they're a conglomerate with multiple brands rather than John Deere, which is the Deere brand, front and center. So John Deere, $133 billion market cap. The next biggest, CNH Industrial, Case, you may have heard of, or New Holland.
Yeah, Case, I know, and New Holland.
Yeah. So it's an American listed company, but it's actually controlled by an Italian family. Anyway, $22 billion market cap, also listed on the New York Stock Exchange. CNHI is the ticker. Some of the brands they have: Case, New Holland, Steyr, Miller, a few others. You're nodding.
Yeah, I know most of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then the other one is AGCO. New York Stock Exchange as well, ticker AGCO, AGCO. That's a $10 billion company. Some of the brands that it has: Challenger, Fendt, Massey Ferguson, Valtra.
Less familiar with those.
Yeah, well, it's a smaller company.
Yeah.
So, but I think that if they're the big three in the space, $133 billion market cap, $22 billion market cap, $10 billion market cap. Deere is the 800-pound gorilla
Giant.
in the space.
Absolutely
But
killing them.
That's not really surprising to anyone. I feel like most people know that.
The business model for Deere has been interesting. You mentioned at the start there, Ren, they are now trying to position themselves, or definitely moving more into the space of software and software as a service. But up until that point, so say before the past 5 years, you'd be looking at it as a hardware play, an industrial type company that just sells product through networks.
Yeah, and you would have looked at how many tractors and combine harvesters and everything it could sell. There would have been a little bit of recurring revenue from repairs and from the dealers, but really this was a business selling hardware, and you would have looked at where's its sustainable competitive advantage or its moat, and you would have said in its dealer network. And you would have said it's I think it's got more than 2,000 dealers in the US. I think it's got more than 5,000 worldwide, and that was what Deere hung its hat on. Wherever you were,
there's a Deere.
Mainly in the States. Wherever you were in the States, there was a Deere dealer near you. It was really competitive to become a Deere dealer, to become part of that network, and so you could charge a premium for it. People wanted your tractors because they knew they were the best. They knew they wouldn't break down, and so you had this brand moat. You had good dealers, and you would sell. And we've got a clip from their CEO 9 years ago, Sam Allen. And that's what he thought their competitive advantage was.
I'd like to say part of it is our 176-year history, and some people would also say that can be an Achilles heel. But I do think our values keep us well grounded. Clearly, one of our competitive advantages is our great dealer network. And we're really good at developing dealers and strong dealers, and it's a source of sustainable competitive advantage. We do a really good job focusing on productivity, uptime, and low total cost of ownership. That's our value proposition to the customer, and we try not to deviate from that.
And so, Bryce, 5 years ago, if we were looking at this company, we would have looked at it as an industrial, and we would have looked at it like a Boeing or a Caterpillar or, I don't know, like a Ford. We would have said, how many big hunks of steel with paint on it can it sell?
This is true. But Ren, the reason we're saying 5 years ago, because 2017 was an inflection point for Deere where they really started to ramp up their tech stack with the acquisition of a company called Blue River Technology. Now, Blue River were a leader in applying machine learning to agriculture. Now, why is this important?
Because AI is going to eat the world.
That's it.
No, well, Blue River were really leaders in computer vision, which is the eyes of machine learning. So if you think about AI and machine learning as the brain, what we need to do to really enable machines like farm equipment is give them sensors, give them eyes, give them smell, probably not smell.
Touch and feel.
Yeah. We're pretty good at making machines move. We've really nailed wheels.
Yes.
Boston Dynamics really
nailed wheels.
Boston Dynamics are pioneering legs, and some of the things they're doing with robots is pretty cool. But giving machines eyes is really important when we're talking about this. And, the classic example here is if you want to have an artificial intelligence sprayer and you only want it to spray pesticide when a plant actually needs it, you need to give the machine some way to know if they need to spray, if there's a weed there that needs spraying. And this is where computer vision comes into play. And Blue River were real leaders in this space. Deere have acquired them, and we'll talk about some of the products that we've seen rolled out in the past few years. But Deere started to think about themselves as a technology company a little bit before this, and you can see that Deere were on the forefront of some pretty basic technology in hindsight, but back in the day. So I've never driven a tractor before, but apparently it's incredibly hard to drive a tractor straight in an open field, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, they were on the forefront of basic guidance technology and stuff like that in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they really built out their tech stack from there, and we'll get into that. But with Blue River Technologies acquisition in 2017 and some of the developments in the years since, Deere have really tried to reposition themselves as a technology company. The way they talk is as a technology company. They launched their smart industrial strategy in 2020, and now they're really trying to build out their software subscription revenue. And so the way we have to analyze them sort of changes a little bit.
So the smart industrial strategy in 2020 came through, and then in 2021, they made another acquisition in Bear Flag Robotics, which was a self-driving tractor startup for $250 million. And subsequently, that has led to this year the introduction of a self-driving tractor at the annual Consumer Electronics Show.
Yes.
There you go, Consumer Electronics. John Deere is showing up.
In Consumer Electronics in Las Vegas is where the show is, and there is nowhere more appropriate to launch a tractor than in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip.
It's fascinating.
But I think that was definitely a PR move, I think.
Yeah.
The day that they launched the self-driving tractor at the Consumer Electronics Show, their share price was up 6% on the day when the S&P 500 and CNI Industrial were flat. So, this was their play to get in front of people like you and I. City boys.
Hell yeah. Well, it worked. It worked. We did an episode unpacking it on The Dive, our business news podcast. So if you're looking for more information on the autonomous tractor, go and check that out. But Ren, you've been discussing the tech stack, and it comes in sort of 5 components and has really been building since sort of early 2000. The first component was their sort of hardware and software element. You're talking integrated displays into tractors and just sort of basic display mechanics. Then guidance you've spoken about, helping tractors stay on track, I guess, auto path, helping them turn automatically. Then there was the connectivity and digital solutions part of their tech stack. That's allowing farmers to open gates, turn on water supplies, you name it, with their phones.
Yeah, and really to track a lot of things. This is like farm management systems. Yeah.
So water levels in dams or whatever it may be, like moisture in soils, all those sorts of things. Then there's the automation and machine IQ, which was the acquisition we spoke about in 2017. That's See and Spray, which Ren spoke about there. And then now they're really building out fully autonomous tech stacks. So what this really is leading to is a fully autonomous, efficient farming landscape.
Yeah. And I think it's important to think about, because it's not like technology. I think it's important to put all of these technological developments on a broader timeline, because the story of farming since Deere was first created in the 1800s, it's integrating technology to become more efficient. Yeah. And, you know, like from mechanical tractors to autonomous vehicles, like it is just one long continuum, and it's all about becoming more resource efficient and being able to farm larger areas. And it's a long and continuous story, which Deere just happens to be at the forefront of and have been at the forefront of for the last 150 years. And so we get really excited about the end goal of imagine an autonomous farm and what that would look like. But that might be decades away, but there's still heaps of really interesting stuff happening now beyond the splashy, fully autonomous tractor that they launched at a consumer electronics show. One recent one that Deere have launched that I think gives people an insight into what integrating this technology into their hardware looks like today is See and Spray. So this is traditionally you would get a sprayer, you would drive it through a field and you would spray pesticide on all crops because you had no way to figure out what crops needed it, what didn't. So the most efficient way to do it was just to spray everything.
Yeah.
But Deere have been developing See and Spray technology and really integrating Blue River Technologies computer vision so you can enable the machine to look at a crop as it's driving through a field, recognize if it needs to be sprayed with pesticide, and then only spray those crops that need it.
Think about the speed it must need to do that.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So Deere launched maybe a couple of years ago now See and Spray Select, which was green on brown. So it was color detecting technology and it could recognize green weeds on brown fields. So fallow ground where nothing's planted, when you're preparing a field to plant, you could drive a sprayer through with this technology. It could see a weed and it would spray, but it wouldn't spray the whole field. So there you're using less pesticide than you would otherwise, which is saving you money and hopefully increasing efficiency as well, getting the same result. That's great. But then they've launched See and Spray Ultimate, I think late last year, earlier this year, which is green on green. So now the technology can actually detect the difference between a weed and a crop. And so it's been used on corn, soybean, cotton, and the company report it's reduced herbicide use by up to 80%. It can recognize the difference.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
Wow, that is amazing.
And so then they talk about how they do it. So across the boom, which is big arms of a sprayer, I guess you'd call it, there are multiple cameras using this computer vision technology that's plugged in with their machine learning software to recognize plants and to distinguish weeds from crops. And then they automatically activate their sprayer nozzles all within 200 milliseconds. There are 36 cameras mounted across this boom. So they're covering more than 195 square meters at once. And then all that data is also being fed back into the farm management system. The John Deere Operations Center is what they call it. That data is building like a weed map and shows you weed density and allows you to then analyze and make decisions based on that as well.
Amazing.
It's pretty cool.
It is amazing, yeah.
Two city boys talking farming.
God, it must be expensive. But Ren, Deere aren't the only ones doing this. Some of their major competitors are playing catch up in the tech space. AGCO in September 2021 acquired Pharmatics. They're a farm robotics and automation company with precision livestock farming aspects to the business. But in 2021, Precision Planting, interestingly, a company that AGCO acquired at the same time that Deere acquired Blue River in 2017, they announced an agreement to acquire Creative Sites Media, which is a software and app development company, I'm imagining, to start combining all these areas of the business together. And then Case New Holland also in 2021 acquired Raven to improve their autonomous and precision agricultural capabilities. So it's all happening.
Yeah.
It is all happening.
So Bryce, let's take a break and then let's get to the key numbers and then we'll play the expert and we'll talk about the bull case, the bear case, and what the future holds.
Love it. Well, the new Deere is listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The ticker is DE, and you can access the US stock market plus the Australian and New Zealand markets on the Sharesies platform with no investment minimum. You can use promo code GROW when you sign up to the Sharesies platform for $10 in your account, ready to invest. We don't have any kickbacks from that. It is publicly available for anyone to use. This is not product advice, and investing comes with risk. Promotion T's and C's apply. But we will take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, Ren, so let's have a look at the numbers. Market cap of $133 billion, up 29% year to date. Incredible outperformance. S&P 500 is down 20% year to date. It's an amazing story.
Yep.
But not only that, it is up almost 200% over the past 5 years.
Yeah. So if we turn to its revenue, $48 billion in revenue. 5 years ago, that was $26 billion. So it's up about 85% in the past 5 years, which is really impressive. If we turn to its profit, $7 billion in profit. 5 years ago, $2.2 billion in profit. So up about 223% in the past 5 years. Now, if we just pause there for a moment, 5 years ago, it made $26 billion in revenue and made $2.2 billion in profit off that. So it's about what? A bit under 10% profit margin.
Yeah.
Now, 5 years later, $48 billion in revenue, $7.1 billion in profit. So that's about a 15% profit margin.
Yeah.
So it's growing its revenue and improving its profit margin at the same time.
You love to see that.
So we're seeing some good signs from this business.
And as a result, the share price is booming.
Yes.
So we're going to play expert. I'll sit on the Equity Mate side. You'll sit on the expert side, and we're going to have a look at key metrics. We're going to have a look at bull case, bear case, and then what the future looks like for autonomous farming and Deere. So, as always, we got to start with key metrics. Where are we at?
Now that we're talking about Deere as a software business, we're not looking at things like machines sold or dealership numbers, although those are important. The two most important metrics when you're looking at the new and improved technology-enabled Deere are connected machines and engaged acres.
So connected machines, I assume, is how many machines actually are now getting the tech connected.
Correct. Yeah. So it's all about, in the same way that Apple cares about how many iPhones are in the field because they can sell us shit like iCloud subscriptions.
Yeah.
Deere care about how many tractors are out there hooked up to their technology because they can sell Autopath and See and Spray. Well, and then how many sprayers are out there so they can sell See and Spray.
Yeah.
So they're currently at 440,000 connected machines. By 2026, so not too far away, 4 years, 3 years now, they want to be at 1.5 million connected machines.
They want to be putting on an extra million in the next 4 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years.
That's number one, connected machines. And really that is because if they're a connected machine, they're a vehicle to sell an ongoing subscription to.
Yeah.
So that's one. Number two is engaged acres. And that is how many fields are hooked up to their, it's called John Deere Operations Center, but it's like their farm management system, have sensors, they're tracking and collecting data. They're currently at 315 million engaged acres, and they want to get to 500 million by 2026.
Would we be assuming that of their three segments, construction and forestry, small ag, and then big ag, let's just call it that.
Yeah.
The big ag was at 40% of sales or whatever it was. You would imagine that this starts to become more and more of a penetrating in terms of group sales. Like it feels like a lot of the technology here is really leaning into the production and precision of farm tech.
Yeah. So it's definitely their fastest growing segment. In Q4, that grew at 59%. Revenue grew at 59% in production and precision ag. Big ag, as we're calling it. Small ag and turf grew at 26%. Construction and forestry grew at 20%. And then financial services grew at 2%.
Yeah.
So that's definitely their fastest growing division. It's the main one we've analysed. I think if we were having a conversation about construction equipment, we would be talking about a whole different competitive set. We'd be talking about Caterpillar, Komatsu, and Deere being, I would say, smaller. Forestry, I think they do okay in. Small ag and turf, they're strong. I think a lot of the technology that would trickle down.
Where I was going with that is probably in the next question is that part of the business would really form the bull case for this company, I would imagine.
Given that I'm playing the expert, yes. But like you might get another expert who says their technology is going to disrupt Caterpillar and they're going to become number one in construction as well as farming. Like there's plenty of ways to make a bull case.
So are there any other metrics that you'd keep an eye on? We've got connected machines and engaged acres.
I just want it, so just for context, so engaged acres currently at 315 million. From what I could find, the next biggest in terms of farm management systems, there's a company, Climate FieldView. FieldView is a software. They have about 200 million acres. I think they're about second.
Okay.
So in terms of the amount of machines, they're number one. In terms of the amount of acres, in terms of the amount of fields, they're tracking, they're number one. So they've got a real head start in this space. Now, and they don't really split it out in a helpful way in their financials, but if you wanted to then look at what matters there, it's what's their revenue per connected machine? What's their revenue per engaged acre? How does that change over time? You know, are they cross-selling? Is the average revenue per user increasing? But I couldn't find those numbers when I was looking.
And so do they have subscription at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's not just a one hit, you buy, see and spray and the tech is there and then an upgrade comes, but so there's elements of you have to subscribe month on month to get access to this software.
Yeah. So let's move to the bull case because I've got some notes on it there.
Yep. All right. What is the bull case then?
It's much of what you said. It's an ecosystem play and the operating leverage that comes from a software business. So let's start with the ecosystem side of it and then get to the subscriptions. Spreaders for fertilizers, tractors to plant, sprayers to spray your crops, harvesters to actually harvest the fully grown crops. All different pieces of machinery, and in theory, you could have all bought them from different companies. You could have had a New Holland harvester and a Deere tractor, and as long as you knew how to use both of them, in theory, you were all good.
Yeah.
But more and more, as software becomes important, as farm management systems become important, as platforms to aggregate data become important, you're not going to want to have different equipment because you're going to want all that data feeding into one system and you're going to want one set of software to be able to control it all. So in the same way that we've seen Apple's ecosystem become a real moat for them, we're going to see the same in other forms of equipment, and in this case in agricultural equipment. And so Deere, with the leadership position, with the head start in software, they have a chance to really lock people into their ecosystem, and then they can build switching costs. Because then all of a sudden you're not just going from a Deere tractor to a New Holland tractor, you're going from a Deere operating system to a New Holland operating system. You've got to replace all your equipment, but importantly, you probably lose a lot of historic data as well. And so you can build incredibly high switching costs if you can lock people into a hardware and software ecosystem compared to just selling them hardware. So that's number one.
Nice. So we know what happened to the Apple share price once investors got a whiff of increasing revenue coming from subscription. So do John Deere have targets for subscription revenue?
Well, this comes to number two. So if you lock people into the ecosystem, then you can sell them services subscriptions, and importantly, then you can cross-sell them more and more as well. And so Deere, you asked, do they have a target? They do have a target. They're aiming for 10% of their sales, their revenue, to come from recurring services revenue, subscription revenue, rather than hardware sales by 2030. So 10%. Okay. So it's not a big part of their business now.
Yeah.
48 billion in revenue. So if they're aiming for 10%, hopefully that revenue number grows, but they're thinking like between $5 and $6 billion in subscription revenue by 2030.
Still a lot of tractors.
Yeah. But I guess they're also still very reliant on hardware sales by 2030. So if you're building a model of this business, you're relying on them to keep selling hardware in the same way you're relying on Apple to keep selling iPhones.
So 10%, it feels moderate, to be honest. I don't know. It either, if they overshoot that, then investors are going to love it. Where does that sit relative to, Apple, who's probably a bit further down the track in terms of their percentage of revenue coming from this subscription model?
So in 2021, Apple had 22% of their revenue from services. So from Apple TV, Apple Music, Apple Arcade, all of those monthly subscriptions, iCloud, all of that. Now, the estimates are their gross margin in their services business is between 65 and 70%.
Wow.
And you compare that to Deere's gross margins of, I think, about 20% in 2022. The operating leverage that you can build in your business is pretty high. And what we mean by that is operating leverage. The higher your operating leverage, the more of each incremental dollar you make flows directly down to the profit line. So it doesn't get eaten up in cost of doing business or anything else. And so for a company like Apple, you sell the phone once, but then for each incremental subscription you can sell, you have really high operating leverage there, because there's not heaps more costs for Apple to add another Apple TV subscriber. So that revenue that they get from when Bryce signs up goes straight to their profit line, because they've already made the content, they've already built the system, and they just want to get more subscribers. In theory, that's what Deere does as well. They sell the tractor once, they've built a whole bunch of different software to sell, and then each additional piece of software they sell flows almost directly down to their profit line. That's operating leverage.
So their margins aren't quite reflective at the moment of a tech company.
No. Their margins are right in the world of large-scale industrials. Net, so not gross, but net margins, they're about 15%, we were saying earlier. Ford is about 14%. Caterpillar about 12.5%. So they're right in that ballpark.
Yeah.
I tried to pull Boeing as well, but Boeing made a loss last year, so couldn't pull that.
So the bull case revolves around its ecosystem, building that operating leverage and increasing recurring services revenue sort of through to 2030.
Just to put a bow on bull before we go to bear, I think what you'd be looking at is those key metrics, connected machines, engaged acres. As those increase, what that is doing to incremental revenue, and trying to figure out a revenue per additional acre and revenue per additional machine. Until Deere actually report on some of that stuff, you'll have to do the work yourself. And then looking at profit per incremental acre, profit per incremental machine. And then you can start to look at the difference between the two and start to figure out, well, what's the operating leverage here? And for the last 5 years, profit has grown meaningfully faster than revenue. The bull case would hinge on that trend continuing.
Well, that's the bull. Now, we've got to turn to the bear case because, always important to think about the bear case. And this one revolves around competition. I
think the innovator's dilemma is the basis for the bear case here. So, are you familiar with it?
No.
It was a pretty groundbreaking book, but it spoke about why large companies that invest huge sums of money in research and development often still get disrupted by new players. And, companies that try and stay on the forefront of technology, but they still are unable to innovate and keep up with the market, and they get disrupted. And time again in industry after industry, we see that big established players invest billions of dollars in R&D and they still get disrupted.
Yeah, right.
And so the question is why? And there's a number of reasons, and it's a good book, but for the purposes of this story with Deere and the bear case, it's often because they're really set in their ways. And it's really hard, even if you're investing and researching new technology, it's really hard to turn a company and focus it on the new thing. And the most recent example of that would be electric vehicles and how hard it has been for established car companies to make that switch, because in reality there's so much working capital, so much knowledge and expertise, so much experience tied up in the old way of doing things. You could say the same for Deere. They are trying to integrate technology into their existing way of doing things. They're not trying to radically change the way farming is done. they're just trying to take the farmer out of the seat of the tractor or out of the seat of the combine harvester and replace it with a computer. But the question is there a better way to do these things? And if there is, will it be Deere that comes up with it?
Yeah.
Is there a different way to integrate technology into farms? Is there a better way to farm outside of just replacing a farmer with a computer? And if the answer to that question is yes, the bear case would hinge on Deere not being the one to come up with it. Because sure, they might be trying to get 10% of their revenue by 2030 from services, but 90% is still selling big hunks of steel.
Yeah.
So that's number one. And like, for example, we spoke about See and Spray earlier. There are 9 other companies that from a research report we could find, 9 other companies in the smart spraying space, with several of them commercializing products that have computer vision and can do this green on green spraying, where they can where they have the artificial intelligence to separate crop from weed and only spray weeds. So it's not like Deere is out here alone doing this. There are plenty of other companies in the space. So that for the first part of the bear case, yeah, you're right. Competition and the innovator's dilemma.
And then the second part, Ren, could revolve around what is known as the right to repair movement.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So this isn't unique to Deere, but Deere are like
right in the thick of it.
Right in the thick of it. The quote unquote free the tractor movement.
Yeah.
So basically, as more and more companies integrate software into their hardware, be it washing machines with Internet of Things connected devices, Apple with their walled garden ecosystem, or Deere with their Internet of Tractors connected devices. These companies are really protective over their software and they don't want people to be able to access it and use it, and they also don't want people to be able to repair their hardware.
Yeah.
You know, like as soon as you break your iPhone screen and you take it to repair it in the shops, you void the warranty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the right to repair basically says this is unfair that technology companies are doing this, and we should have, once we pay for a product, we should have the ability to change it, to repair it without having to pay exorbitant amounts of going to a Apple shop or a Deere authorized dealer. At a hacker convention earlier this year, Deere's smart tractor software was jailbroken as like a big demonstration of it can be done. And there are right to repair laws coming. So in the EU, I think they were first announced in 2020. In the UK, I think there was something similar introduced in 2021. There is a movement not specific to agriculture, but generally around the right to repair. The question when we're thinking about this as an investment is if Deere is pinning its hopes to expensive software subscriptions, locking people into the ecosystem, making them use Deere authorized dealers to get repairs, is that model going to be disrupted by new laws that say you can go to any farm supply dealer to get repairs, or you can sideload third-party software and use other farm management systems rather than John Deere's operations center? You know, can you upload that data somewhere else and use someone else's software? Like, those are the questions that will get asked if this movement picks up.
Yeah.
Because then it might be, well, they have great tractors, but their software is second rate, and a pure play software company might come into the space and integrate. So I guess that's the question. It's probably, you probably wouldn't make it a core part of your bear case now. It would be the watch out, because like you'd have to adjust your assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So bull case, bear case. This is an exciting one to think about from the point of view of where does it look and where does it land in 10 years' time? If it does hit its engaged acres, if it's connected equipment, if it gets that recurring services revenue, what is Deere in 10 years?
Yeah. Look, we're only playing experts.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that I've done the financial modeling. I would say bigger. Yes. But I think in terms of the way Deere talk about what farming could look like in 10 years, they think that most straight line crops in America will be farmed autonomously.
Yeah, I'd be so.
In the next 10 years. And so, you know, that's rows of soybeans, rows of corn being farmed by their machinery, by farmers that spend more time sitting in front of a computer than they do sitting on a tractor, and that are all paying Deere monthly recurring revenue for that. They also see a lot of opportunity to extend into other verticals, and one that you read a lot about these days is there are a whole bunch of agronomy businesses that essentially give consulting services to farmers, and they test soil and they make recommendations about what you should do to certain fields to make sure there's enough nutrients in the soil, all of that stuff, what should be planted where, and Deere think that they can really crack into that space with all the data that they're collecting. They can start making those recommendations. It's not just about having software in their machines for farmers, but it's then about like how else can they extend into other parts of the farming economy, and how else can they provide value to farmers with this just massive amount of data that they're collecting on these farms. Yeah.
Fascinating business. The autonomous tractors don't come cheap. I think the latest figure was $500,000 for the one that was released at the...
It's a business expense.
Massive business expense. But love it, Ren. Thank you for playing expert.
Emphasis on playing.
Playing, yes. It is a fascinating company, one that we've had on the radar for a while. We have unpacked it on the Dive, our business news show. So go and check that out.
And if we should say, if someone thinks they could have played expert better than us,
yeah, please reach out.
We tried to find an expert in Australia or anyone overseas who would talk to us to be an expert here. It doesn't feel like many Australian investors are interested in this company.
It was hard to find. So we would love to hear from an expert to talk about this maybe in the new year as well. So
I'd also love to do a deep dive on some of these other industrials. Like Caterpillar is one that I find like a fascinating company. It's like these industrial players that have such a stranglehold on their industry.
Share,
yeah, they have so much market share in huge industries.
Yeah.
They're just fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave that for Summer Series 2023 to 4, potentially.
Great.
24. But that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you to Sharesies for supporting Equity Mates Summer Series 2023. If you'd like more information, head to sharesies.com.au or download the Sharesies app. If you want to sign up to the Sharesies platform, you can use the code GROW. We don't get any commission from that. It is publicly available, but you do get $10 into your account ready to invest. Promo T's and C's apply. But Ren, we'll leave it there, and we'll be picking it up next episode.
Sounds good.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.